Jesus does not believe in God. But first, before I get started, I would like to give you guys a very, very brief definition of the word belief. And a very simple definition is to have an assumption that something, someplace, or someone exists and you have no proof. Therefore, if you think that someone, someplace, or something exists without having any proof, then you believe. Therefore, I would like to ask the question, do you think Jesus believed in God, or do you think Jesus knew God existed? And my answer would be, I think throughout the scripture, there was quite enough evidence that Jesus did not see himself as being separate from God. Therefore, I would like to say the number one root cause of most of our suffering is not that we believe in God, it is just that we do not know who we are. And with that being said, it reminds me of a quote, a famous quote from the late Einstein. Einstein said, "Information is not knowledge, and the only true source of knowledge is experience." Therefore, if you have a lot of information, book smart, a lot of information accumulated in the mind, that does not mean that it is true. And if you have not experienced something, it is not your truth. So with that being said, I would like to ask you guys a question. Do you believe you exist? Do you believe the sun exists? Do you believe the moon exists? Do you believe you are breathing? Do you believe you have a body? And if you say yes to any of those things, you do not believe you know. Therefore, today's video is not to dissect whether there is a God or God exists. It is the fact that you do not know who you are. Therefore, it will be most likely impossible for you to know anything exists outside of yourself. Which is why I do not believe in believing. And I think the solution to finding yourself is we must stop from going outside of ourselves, looking externally for our salvation and solutions. And the only way this can happen is if we look inside. And throughout the scriptures and many other sacred scriptures teach that salvation and the kingdom of heaven is within. Which brings me to another fact, a scripture. I think the story was, yes, the story was Sodom and Gomorrah, when Sodom and Gomorrah was about to be destroyed by the angels, and Lot was recommended by the angels to go into the mountains. However, Lot refused to go into the mountains. He went eventually, but at first he did not want to go into the mountains. And for those of us who know anything about scripture and sacred texts, usually the term mountain usually refers to the higher self, the higher mind, and higher consciousness as well. Therefore, what that scripture was saying is that Lot did not want to leave his comfort zone. He did not want to look into himself. He did not want to look into his higher mind. He wanted to stay in his comfort zone. And the reason I said that is because when he was recommended to go into the mountains, he said that he would prefer to go into a nearby city in a very small town called Zoar. And that would be a perfect example of what most of us do today. Yes, we may attend certain spiritual rituals such as attend church. Yes, we may read our scriptures. Yes, we may pray. Yes, we may do certain things. We may be kind. We may be nice. We may do all these things. But however, when it comes to going internally and doing some type of deep introspection, we fail to do so miserably. And the reason Lot said that he did not want to enter the mountain was because he was afraid that some evil will befall him, or some evil or detriment will come about on his behalf. Therefore, most of us would say that we are afraid to look inside because we are afraid to find what we may find. Which brings me to another reference point. I can't remember who it was, if it was a philosopher, I think it was a philosopher, I'm not quite sure, or maybe a famous psychiatrist. They once said that man's greatest fear is to stay in a room alone, all by himself, and just look into himself. This is a very common factor that most individuals may not be aware of. That is the number one reasons why we do not know God. We believe in God because we choose to not look within ourselves. And there are many reference scriptures and other spiritual uh, literature that speaks heavily about looking into oneself and getting a deeper introspection of the mind, and that is where the true self will be found. Looking back at my life, I would also say that there was once a time that I did not know anything about meditation. I heard about it, I did not really know. All I knew was to pray. And there's nothing wrong with prayer because this is what most of us do. Prayer is also a form of a spiritual act as well. However, there is a major difference in reference to prayer and meditation. Meditation is basically going within and trying to silence the mind, trying to observe the thoughts, and trying to get to that still place, that observer being the observed as well. On the other hand, you have prayer. Prayer is more as if you are externally looking outward and expecting some type of uh, answer to come from an outside source. However, in meditation, we are not looking to an outside source. We are trying to find that outside source from within. Therefore, the solution that I could think of, that would be the number one reason why we do not find God, we do not know God. It's not that God may not exist or do not exist. In fact, I sometimes hate to use the word God because that is a very loaded and somewhat contaminated word as well. Only because if you look throughout history, many individuals have died, many individuals have suffered in the name of this thing or person or whatever you may label God to be, as the cause of many, many suffering. Many lives was taken in the name of God. Also, when you use the name God, you have to be careful and understand that there are many different individuals who have many different beliefs, and there is not just one God in reference to the many religions and spiritual beliefs as well. However, I think it is okay that I would just use the Western God, if I may say, because Western God, the Western religions is mainly monotheist, and they usually believe in one God. However, in the East, there is usually numerous or a plethora of gods. So when I'm talking in this video, I am talking about the Western religion God, the omnipotent, all-seeing, all-knowing, the creator of the universe, the creator of the heavens and earth, and the God that is mentioned in the Bible in Genesis chapter 1 and throughout. Again, the root cause of not knowing God exists is because most individuals, just like Lot, fail to go within. So therefore, I highly recommend that most individuals practice some form of internal meditation there where they can look within themselves and find some type of answer to all of their problems without actually sacrificing themselves by giving away the power that they have that was given to them as well. I think would it be a better, I would, wrong choice of words, not better because there's no better and no best. However, I think a great example that most Westerners would struggle with, because most individuals believe that they exist, but they do not really exist in the way that they think they exist. And what I'm saying is that we tend to believe that we are our jobs. We tend to believe that we are our relationships, our titles. I am a parent, I am a cousin, I am a brother, I am a mother, I am a teacher, I am a gardener, I am a barber, I am a student. We tend to associate ourselves with this I, this false self, or in other words, the Buddhists may call it the non-self. And the non-self concept is, I think, the first solution that is needed in order to know there is a God. One again must find themselves first and foremost. Because if you do not know yourself, it is most likely impossible for you to know someone else, whether they be God or someone in the natural as well. So again, using the Buddha as a great example, another enlightened being, the Buddhists have many different concepts in reference to their spiritual practices. And I'm not here to go into every single thing because I'm just giving you guys something that is going to help you to eliminate this idea of the false self. And I too, just like many who may be watching this video today, I was not always aware of this non-self. I too believed I was this, I was that, I was this, I was that. They call me Triple P, Pimp, Prophet, and Priest, PIMP. I too believed I was the title. I believed I was a student. I believed all of these things I believed about myself for most of my life. However, it was only until much later down the line, getting much deeper into my spiritual practices and studying other esoteric knowledges is one of the deep and one of the root causes that gave me the ability to find this knowledge and work more deeply on myself. Which is why the Bible also says, study to show thyself approved, which is what most individuals do not do, because when they have a particular belief or they have a particular religion that they follow, most individuals fail to look into anything else. They would just normally say that their knowledge, information, and understanding is the truth and there is no other. However, I think this is one of the most grievous mistakes any individual could make, to believe that they have the total truth and the truth are nothing but the truth as well. So back to the Buddhists. Again, the Buddhist has many practices, many different spiritual beliefs. However, the Buddhist, and the reason I'm using the Buddhist is because the Buddhist has a very unique concept on the self, unlike any other religion or spiritual practice that I can think of. Not that any other spiritual practice or spiritual belief is incorrect. It is just that the Buddhist main goal is to eliminate suffering, because the Buddhists acknowledge that suffering exists, and to stop the suffering is the number one focus of Buddhists. There's nothing else, everything else is secondary, but the main focus is suffering. And according to the Buddhists, the main reason for suffering is you do not know yourself. Yes, there are other practices, all type of, we have samsara, we have the six realms, we have the three poisons, we have the four noble truths, we have the eightfold path, and all of these things, and much more. However, I am specifically talking about the self, or the non-self, that the Buddhists so adamantly promote, if I may say. Therefore, that is why I am using the Buddhists as an example in reference to making my point clear. The reason you believe in God is because you believe in yourself as well. You believe that you are the person that you think you are. You believe that you are, again, a teacher, a student, a pastor, whatever it is that the title that you are, male or female, whatever it is that you think you are, that is incorrect according to the teachings of the Buddha. And no, I am not saying that the self does not exist. I am saying that the self does not exist in the way that you think it exists, because most individuals, when they think of themselves as an eternal soul, and they believe, and that there is not they are not, there is not any change. They believe that they are a fixed self. They believe that they are, again, a soul, if I may say. They do not understand the depths of who they truly are, which is why, again, I am creating this video, and I'm using the Buddhist, the five-fold aggregates, to make my point. So the Buddhists have a concept which they call the five aggregates, and the five aggregates simply states that the person that you think you are not a fixed, permanent self, if I may say. You are you are comprised of five aggregates, or five parts that make up yourself, and they flow smoothly, but you just are not aware of these processes that take place, and you think that you are a self, but in actuality, the Buddhists would say that these five aggregates make up the self, or the non-self. And this, again, can only be found out when you meditate. You cannot, there is no way around this. The Bible, when Jesus talked about, be still, know that I am God. When you see scriptures talking about Jesus going into the mountains, praying in the mountains, that is him talking about introspection. That is Jesus talking about meditation. That is Jesus going into the mountains and looking deep into his mind, into the psyche, into his the spiritual self, if I may say. So this can only be achieved in meditation. Prayer cannot achieve this, unfortunately. Prayer is, again, whereas you are looking externally for something, for an answer, for a solution to your problems, or whatever the case may be. but meditation is more of an eternal practice, which is why what I'm talking about, to find to believe and to not to believe, but to know that this non-self and this the false self, the ego, is just a masquerade, a mask that the ego wears, that it tells you that, and we need this. Don't get me wrong, we all need this false self to exist, because without this false self, we wouldn't, we wouldn't do anything. We would be pretty much, I don't know, it's not, I can't think of the word I want to say right now, but we need this false self to exist. But the Buddhist is basically trying to get you to not to acknowledge that the true self, and to just use the false self in a sense to function in everyday life, but not become attached to the self like most individuals do. So again, back to the five aggregates, and the five aggregates are uh, form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. And again, these are the five aggregates. This is a process that takes place within the body, and it happens so smoothly and so almost uninterrupted. We don't really notice that it happens, but uh, everything happens for Buddhists also, cause and effect. This is a big thing. Everything, nothing happens without a cause. So anyhow, let's get back to the five aggregates, because I'm kind of getting off track. So the five aggregates again: form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. And these five aggregates is what makes up the human, the self, the non-self. The non-self is what the person that we think we are is made up of these five aggregates. And to make because this is a very difficult. You notice I'm hesitating right now, because I'm trying to figure out the best way to say this, because for someone in the West, this is almost somewhat uh, uncomprehensive. We cannot comprehend this concept of not being the non-self. This is something that is not really common in the West. So almost anything you say would be hard for someone to understand, unless they again practice the meditation, they go within and so forth. But until that happens, this would usually sound like gibberish or garbage. So that's why I'm kind of a little hesitant, trying to figure what would best to say. So again, but to give an example I could think of about which would describe the five aggregates best is, for example, a car. When you look at a car, when we see a car driving down the street or sitting parked or whatever, uh, we just look at the car as a whole. We don't look at the car, and we don't say the wheel, there's the steering wheel, that's the tire, there are the seats. We don't say that's the hood, that's the back trunk. We label the car. When we see a car, we label the car as a whole. We don't pick out the parts of the car, just like a chariot. One example the Buddhists use frequently is a chariot. You have the wheels and you have the frame and all of these other things. We don't tend to look at, when we see an individual, we don't say, oh, that's the leg, that's the eye, that's the feet, that's we just look at the individual and say, hey, that's Bob, that's Jim, that's Jeff, that's so and so. That's what we normally say. We don't separate the parts of the individual. We tend to just look at the individual and say that as the individual as a whole. So, which brings me to the point again, the five aggregates, because it happens so simultaneously and so smoothly, we do not see the parts, we do not see the form, we don't see the feeling, we do not see the perception, we don't see the mental formations, and we don't see the consciousness, which are all processes that takes place in the brain. And I would say this. Now, this is very uncommon, even for science. Science usually don't believe in any type of woo-woo or type of miraculous thing. Science don't believe in things of that sort. However, science would even agree and say that the mind is the self is made of environmental factors and all of these other factors. Even science would even agree with the Buddhists. This is done. That is very rare. If you see the scientists agree with you, that is a huge thing. The science does not promote God, or they don't promote any other supernatural type of thing. However, they would, many of them would agree that the self is made up of many different components. Some would even say the mind, this comes from the brain, electrical wiring, and so forth and so forth. However, that is not what the Buddhists are saying. I'm just saying that science would, lean more on the Buddhist concept of the five aggregates being more accurate than any other religious belief that exists, such as the soul and other spirit and things of that nature. So again, science leans more towards this Buddha concept being an accurate representation of the true self as well. So back to this five self, this five aggregates, the non-self. Like I said, the non-self is an illusion, and that is the goal of the Buddhists when they talk about enlightenment, is to recognize that we are living in a matrix. The Bible says, Jesus said, "Be ye in the world, but not of the world." And the Bible constantly, and Jesus constantly talks about the flesh, and we must deny the flesh, and so forth and so forth. So we see that there's many references as to uh, not believing so strongly in the false self, and realizing that this place we call reality is an illusion. And that illusion, I will get back to the five aggregates, because that is again the focal point of this video. And again, this illusion, this is also related to the five aggregates. We would say that another good example would be is to look at a video game. And let's use, for example, The Sims. The Sims is a perfect example. The Sims, because it's more like realistic. People go to work, they go to school, they cook, they party, they drink, they do whatever they do, they smoke. The Sims is a more realistic multiplayer game. So it's, or you could think any game, Mario Brothers, any game. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that what is going on with the false self, the illusory self, is that most individuals do not consider themselves to be characters in a video game. They consider themselves to be real characters in the real world. And the concept of the non-self will be most related to this video game analogous, as to say that the character in the game, Sims, Mario, whatever game you could think of, you believe that that is you. You are not, you do not know that you are the character in the game. You are not aware that you are not the, you're not aware that everything in the game is not real. And that is what I'm talking about. That is what we're referring to as the matrix. And we are all in the matrix. We are all in this thing they call Maya, the illusion, the dream state. Me, you, your cousin, every single person you see is trapped in this illusion. There's not one person in this illusion that is not a part of this matrix, this illusion. However, it is the goal of the Buddhists is this enlightenment, is to at least be aware that you are trapped in this illusion. It is like a prisoner who is locked up in jail, who, say for example, better choice, Plato's cave. For those of you know anything about philosophy, you have something called Plato's cave, and Plato's cave is talking about individuals who was born from birth, and they was in this cave below the earth, and they was chained down, their necks was held straight, and there was some type of shadowy figure on the screen, and they saw these figures on the screen. And again, I'm not here to teach philosophy, but you could go and look it up, Plato's cave, and you could get a much better idea of what I'm talking about. But the individuals, they see those images on the screen, those shadows, and because they were in this state of mind, this place all their lives, they do not know anything else. So they believe the images on the wall is the real deal. And that is what is going on with us as well. We are just like the individuals in the cave who are tied and bound to this false reality, this false matrix, and we believe that the images that we see in front of us every day is reality. However, according to the Buddhists, according to the concepts of Maya and samsara. This is not real. You are in the game again. You believe that you are the player. You're not aware that you are the player. You are associating yourself with the character of the game. So if you believe you're the character of the game, you could never escape. You could never even technically you could never even know God per se, because you are in the game. You are a character, and this God or whatever this thing you're talking about, this is outside of this matrix. And the only way that you could come in contact with this God or this thing you call God is to realize that you are trapped in this illusion, that the self is not real, and everything else is again a part of the matrix. And when you find this or come to this understanding, which they call enlightenment, then you would be able to look beyond this illusion and get in contact with whatever there may be outside of this game, if I may say. So think of it from this perspective, like imagine you are trapped in this game, this illusion, this game, but we go to work, you do all these things you're doing, and you think that you are actually a real human being. You believe that you are this character, eating, drinking, partying, having sex, whatever it is you think that you're doing. This is not an easy illusion to escape. I don't want you to think that this is something that you could just wake up one morning and say, "Wham, that is that," and I see through it. No, this takes a lot of diligence. This takes a lot of work. This takes a lot of introspection. This takes a lot of looking, a lot of searching, seeking to find the truth. You will not come to this understanding by accepting the things that you are told to be true. And if you do not go any further and look any further, it is very most likely, highly, that you would never, ever, ever, ever find the truth. And that is what they call against samsara, the wheel. You would just come back again. And there's a big difference between rebirth and reincarnation. Hindus promote reincarnation. Even there's many, I would assume, I would say there are references to reincarnation in the Bible also. When Jesus came back after the death, burial, resurrection, he came back. He appeared to be somebody else, a gardener, and other times he appeared to be somebody else. He did not, and the individuals didn't know who he was, but he was Jesus. But those are small references. Some individuals may argue, spiritual uh, leaders may argue and say those are not examples. But if someone coming back died, they come back and it's somebody else, I don't know what else to say. If it's not whatever you want to say it is, that's what it is. Because again, trying to pull someone out of the matrix, out of the illusion, is not an easy task, because the average individual is gonna go kicking and screaming to the grave. That is why, again, this illusion is not something that is easily broken. Again, just like the Plato's cave example allegory, when one individual got free from the bondage and he went outside of the cave, he crawled up into the real world. He saw the real sun. He saw real flowers. He saw the reality of the real world. And when he saw this, he went back to try to explain to the individuals in the cave what he saw. And they was like, "You must be mad. You got to be crazy." And that is exactly what's going on right now. I am like one of those individuals who have came out of the cave, who went and who saw the light, who saw the trees, the real sun, the real moon. Now I'm coming back trying to go into the cave, trying to enter the cave, trying to open the minds of some individuals. And most individuals will most likely reject this concept as well. Because again, this concept, this is all we know. We know the matrix. We were born in the matrix. So I do not expect us to believe anything else. I don't expect us to look and say that, oh, this is not real and all. I'm not saying that your experiences is not real. Again, I'm just saying this is part of Maya. This is a part of the dream state. This is part of the illusion. This is what makes the illusion so powerful. If the illusion was easily broken, everyone would be doing it. But it is not. And I didn't always have this understanding. I didn't always believe the things what I believe or know the things I know. Just like I said before, I think I said in my video and earlier, I do not believe in believing. I am not a person that believes in believing. I believe in the only things I do believe in is something that I believe that could be possible through having a logical understanding of it possibly being possible or plausible, and I have some evidence to believe it, but I cannot prove it. Those are the things that I believe. I believe in only things that I cannot prove, but I believe somewhere logically it could make sense. It makes sense that it's possible that this could happen, or it's plausible, but I do not believe in believing. So again, back to this analogy of the five aggregates. Again, so this process again takes place so smoothly that the average individuals, just like seeing the car, does not see this process broken down bit by bit, bit by bit. That is why, again, meditation, you have to meditate. You have to go and do some type of deep introspection. You have to do mindful meditation. You have to watch the breath. You have to watch the thoughts. And you have to do this continuously until you come to some experience and realize that the self that you believe exists is truly not there at all. So again, back to the aggregates. So we have form, feeling, perception, uh, mental formations, and consciousness. And I would say another good example would be, let's say, for example, I'm just going to use example, a simple example most everyone would maybe could understand. Everyone should be able to understand. So form has to do with the physical form, the body, the eyes, the mouth, the five senses, or the six senses. In my case, the seven senses. And the seven senses in my case, but the six senses, that is why this my channel, my service is called Seven Seals. Seven Seals Astrology Prophetics. And again, this is astrology channel, but I'm promoting the seven senses as well. So, but anyhow, so the five senses or the six senses, dealing with taste, touch, and so forth. When we see something and the eye comes in contact with something, you see something that is what they call considered form, or you taste something, or you touch something, or you feel something. Something has to do with the physical body, the physical world, something tangible. That is when they're referring to as form. And then obviously feeling has to do with feeling a certain way, whether it be pleasant, unpleasant, or having a neutral feeling. And then perception is simply having an understanding of what that thing is that you see. To perceive something, whatever you perceive. You see an apple, you see an object, and you look at that object, and then your mind says, "Oh, that's an apple." So you perceive that thing as being an apple, a tree, a house, a car. That is your perception. And again, all of these things are part of the five aggregates. And then you have mental formations after you see something, and then you feel a certain way about it, and then you have a perception, then you have a perception about it, then you have some type of mental formation, whereas you start to think about it, and you maybe might be have a certain emotion might come about. You might label a thing as being, makes you happy, sad, or you don't like it, or makes you angry, whatever the case may be. You form some type of opinion or some emotional, you give some emotional feedback, and that would be the mental formation. And then you have consciousness. Obviously, consciousness is uh, being aware of that thing that you was looking at, the car, the apple, the house, or whatever. And however, which brings me to another point. I'm going to get back to the aggregates because that's what we're talking about. Which brings me to another point. The idea of the consciousness. The consciousness is a very, very, very deep concept that is misunderstood in most cases. Most individuals get consciousness confused with the mind. And in reference to consciousness, scientists can't even tell you what consciousness is because that is how complex it is. And no one reads this. They have something what they call the hard questions. I'm not a scientist, but I think that has something to do with when you see an object and then something, they can't find that object in the brain. There's no parts of the brain where that object is showing up in the brain somewhere, some type of sensory mechanism. That's what they call a hard problem. So but anyhow, let's get back to consciousness. Some individual might be confused with consciousness and the mind. And I would say, to give you guys a little brief idea, I would say consciousness would be considered like uh, consciousness. The mind would be like a stage. I think that would be good because the concept is it's a simple concept. It's very difficult for the average person to grasp. So I'm just thinking of the most simple way to put it. So consciousness would be, the mind would be a stage, And everything that comes up on that stage is is the thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, or whatever they may be. You might have anything that you think of, that you could think of. You know feeling a certain way, the objects that you see, the thoughts that you have, all that is taking place on the stage of the mind. Again, think of the mind as a stage, and think of consciousness as a spotlight, a spotlight that shines awareness onto that object that's on the stage. So consciousness is like the foundation. Consciousness is like the void that is usually associated in scriptures. A lot of, or if you look at a lot of history, scriptures talk about this void and things coming from the void. That would be in reference to consciousness, this empty space where everything emerges from, and this silent place and so forth. Because again, consciousness is like, consider it like a painter going to paint on a canvas. A blank canvas would be consciousness, and the painting that the painter puts on the screen, on the canvas, would be kind of the mind. If he paints an apple, or he paints a fruit basket, or whatever he paints on that screen, that would be on that canvas, that would be considered the mind. And the mind again has to do with whatever he paints on that canvas would be, the canvas would be consciousness, and whatever he paints on the screen would be the mind. And then the consciousness uses its awareness again as a spotlight to shine on that, to illuminate the object. So when you look at something, you see something, and then that is on the stage of the mind. And when you think about that thing, it is consciousness shining its light of awareness on that thing, which brings it to your awareness that you are looking at a particular thing, that this is an apple, this is a hat, this is a cat, this is a dog, whatever it is consciousness bringing that thing to your awareness. So without consciousness, you could not be able to see anything or know anything or believe anything. That is why most individuals would consider consciousness to be fundamental. So consciousness is just the ability to be aware of something, and the mind is the tool used to, where that stage, where that thought or that feeling or that idea has the opportunity to display itself, and consciousness brings awareness to that thought or that feeling. I hope that makes sense. I kind of said it in so many different ways, as much as I could think of, to kind of get you guys to understand the difference between the mind and consciousness. And because, again, living in the matrix, we are not aware of this separation of the mind and consciousness. And because of this lack of awareness, we tend to put everything into one group, and we tend to say that this is I am my thoughts, and this is me, I am my feelings, and I am this and I am that, and which is incorrect. Because, like I said, back to the form, so back to the five aggregates. So like I said, uh, you have form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and then we have the consciousness. So a real life example of that would be, I'm just going to use this example. It's another example. Let's say you're walking down the street, you're a guy or a girl, you're walking down the street. I'm going to use a guy just to make it, so I'm just sticking to the script. So you're a guy, and you see a girl, so therefore your eye, again, we're talking about form right now. Your eye came in contact with something in the real world, and now that is one of your sensory mechanism is activated, and you see this girl, and then you start to have some type of feeling. You have a feeling. You say, wow, either you might be excited, you might get excited, depends on, you might see, you might say, oh wow, this, you start to feel a certain way, what I'm saying, excited, or you might be neutral, you might don't even care how you feel about a girl, or this person might make you sad, whatever, how it is, but you see this person. So that would be the form, and then so you would have a feeling about this person, and then your perception would kick in, and then you would say, in most cases, you would label this person, you would say, man, this girl is very attractive, this is a dime piece, or wow, this is a body, or what I'm saying, whatever it is that you label, that this is your perception kicking in right now, Then you would then after that you would go into mental formation. You would say, wow, I wonder if she has a boy. You start to imagine now. You start to think about things. I imagine if she, wonder if she have a boyfriend. I wonder, wow, she look like she has money. She look like she doesn't. Look, you look at her attire and you look at her from head to toe, and you just come up. You make all these mental formations in your mind, ideas about her. She looks like she likes money. She knows she doesn't look. She looks like a nice girl. She looks like a church girl. Whatever, you make all these mental assumptions about her, and then it is consciousness, again, the five aggregate, that allow you to 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 have all of these feelings and this awareness of this girl, and all of these things that went on. And again, those were on the stage of your mind, and it was consciousness, and so was showing the light on this girl, and showing the light on your mind to let you realize that this girl was attractive and she looked a certain way, and then you thought about wonder if you should go talk to her and all that. But this process takes place so fast, you do not really know how fast this takes place, and that's why you believe it is you. You believe it is you thinking. You believe it is you making decisions. You believe it is you who is doing all these things. But to make another point, it cannot be you, because if it really was you, and you was this fixed, permanent uh, figure that you think that you are, if you were the body, hypothetically speaking, if you really were the body, and you had some control, the thing that you say that you are, you don't have any control over any of these things. You have no control over your form, your body. You have no control over your feelings. You have no control over your perceptions. You have no form over your thoughts and your emotions. You have no control over your consciousness. So everything that you say that you are, you have no control. You have zero control. Because if you did have some control of yourself or over these things, it would not lead to suffering. You would not suffer voluntarily. If you were your body, you would be able to say, I would like to be taller. I would like to be shorter. I would like to have more muscles. I would like to be slimmer. I would like to be this or that. I would like to have more hair. You would, if you wore this thing, you would be able to have control over this thing. If you were your feelings, you would say, I don't want to feel sad anymore. That's enough. I want to feel happy. Most people would want to feel happy most of the time. And yes, even happiness, that's why nothing is permanent. That's why we need to feel sad sometimes. Again, that's what one of the concepts of Buddhists. Nothing is permanent. Nothing lasts forever. There is no permanency in Buddhism. There's nothing that exists forever and ever and ever. It is just a state, something going from state to state, from one process to the next, from this process to that process, and it changes so smoothly, we're just not aware of it. So again, if you were any of these things, if you were your feelings, yes, you may not want to feel bad all the time. You may not want to feel good all the time. And you might say, sometimes you might say, okay, it's okay if I feel bad about this thing, someone died or whatever the case may be. And then after a period of time, you would have the ability to say, okay, enough is enough. I don't want to feel bad about this anymore. But that is not the case, because we have some people who grieve for a lifetime over certain things. Some people have died and they have left some people alive, and these people are still grieving years and years and years and decades later. Some people never get over certain things. So if you had control, why would you choose to suffer? Tell me, why would you choose to suffer? And that is the concept of purpose of Buddhists. One of the main precepts is suffering exists, and there's a solution to suffering. And so this is what the Buddhist is all about. The Buddhist is not saying that you would eliminate all these feelings, or you will eliminate these. These are the tools that understanding the non-self will give you the ability to not be so clingy and not be so attached to when something happens. Because when something happens to you per se, you realize that it really didn't happen to you at all. It's just an experience that is happening. But it didn't really happen to you, because you are never the same person every minute of every second. You are changing. There are cells dying. There's all these things going on, a body process that's going on. You are not the same person that you was a year ago. You are not even the same person a minute ago. A minute ago, you had some idea that went away. A minute ago, you are now 1 minute closer to your death. You know what I'm saying? 1 minute ago, you're 1 minute older to your grave. You're not the same person. You never was the same person. You're not the same person from when you was 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. So you are none of these things. I know this is a very difficult concept to grasp, the non-self, and I'm not expecting you to grasp, anyone to grasp this concept right away off the bat. However, I am saying that this will take some time and some great introspection and some great searching and looking within yourself to come to this conclusion, because I too have not come, I didn't just come to this conclusion, and there's no way around using the word I. You notice I have to say I have to talk about, I have to say I when I'm going to do something, or I want this or I want that. But it's not that I'm saying that I just know the difference. I just know that this person that I call I is a fictitious, is a facade, is an ego. At least I know that. But some individuals, or most individuals, assume that they are this particular thing they call the I, the self, the false self, the illusory self, the ego, if I may say. So with that being said, I will end this video shortly. So I hope that helps you guys understand why God, why Jesus did not believe in God, because Jesus continuously spoke throughout the scriptures stating that him and the Father was one. God and Jesus was one. And how many of us hear that scripture over and over? Many of us even believe in the birth, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ, but we do not believe we are one with Jesus. We do not believe we are one with God. The Bible clearly states that you are the Son of God, and you are of like Christ and all of this. You are sons and daughters of God, and you still believe that you are this dirt. You are made up of dirt. You just you believe this because you was taught this, and this is what you believe. So if you believe that you're dirt, you could never ever know God, because you believe that you are separate from God. And one of the things that you have to accept and realize that in order to know God rather than to believe in God is that you have to know thyself. You have to know that you are a part of this thing called God. Just like there's no separation between you and Jesus and God. There's no separation between you and God. The best example I could think of to bring this no separation thing to some clarity, when you think of a computer, I don't know how many people know anything about computers, but they have something what they call partition. When they partition a drive is when they basically break up a drive into many bits and pieces. So you might have one drive, a hard drive, a major drive, and then you could break that drive up into drive A, B, C, D. I'm not sure how many parts you can break up, partition the drive into. However, when you partition the drive into those many different parts, there's still only one hard drive. It's not like you have two, three, four hard drives in the computer. You just have one hard drive broken up into many pieces. So which means that yes, they are separate parts of the same one hard drive. And that is what the whole concept of Father, Son, and Holy Spirit is all about. Again, which usually would mean in esoteric would be Father, Son, and Mother, because there's always a male, female, and child. But for some reason, the Holy Spirit was transformed into, I don't know, a neutral thing. And throughout history, we know that the Spirit was usually associated with the female from the creation of Gaia's story. That was female, Mother Earth, Mother Nature. Gaia was a female. Then we have Isis, Osiris, and we have Horus, and we have the Spirit. Then Osiris died. If I remember clearly, it was Isis, the spirit of Isis, that hovered over the body of the spirit, and then baby Horus is born. So again, the spirit is normally associated with a female. I'm going on a side tangent here, but that's something else I'm just talking about for the moment. And then you look at all the ancient scriptures in the Bible. It was Yahweh and El, if I remember clearly. I think they both had wives. They had wives, but those female deities was eliminated over time because of being a patriarch society, and the matriarchs decided to remove those deities. Asherah, if I remember clearly, was the female deity, the wife of El and Yahweh. But again, I'm going off on a side tangent. Those again are just talking about the aspects of the mind, the male and the female brain, and the positive and the negative aspects. Because there's always a positive, there's always a negative, there's always a right, and there's always a left. And that's we're talking about the Hermetic principle of polarity. So getting back to this concept again, where I left off. So if you are all of these things, if you are any of these things, you would be able to control these things, but you cannot. So therefore, you are not any of those things. And I would end this video soon, but I would say that there was one thing that I do believe. I would say I believe this now. This is a belief. This is a belief that I have. This is not a fact, but however, this also relates to the Buddhist concept of rebirth, because we have something called birth, death, and rebirth. So we have what we call samsara. Samsara Samsara is the birth, the rebirth. Whereas you have, when there's a death, you have the opportunity to not reincarnation. Now we're not talking reincarnation. We're talking about rebirth. Rebirth is different from reincarnation. Reincarnation is saying that the soul itself comes back, and the soul itself is reborn into a different body, but the soul is consistently the same. And that is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about rebirth. Rebirth is something different. Rebirth is basically whereas, for example, you have a candle. If you have a candle and you light that candle, and then you take that same flame, and then you use that flame to light a separate candle, a new candle, and that new candle is lit. So now, is that flame from the old candle, that flame from the old candle, is that new candle from the old fire, or is that the new fire? That is the question what I'm asking right now. So you take an old candle with an old flame, and then you light a new candle, and there's a new flame. So the answer would be, there are different parts of that. There's that fire is part of the old fire, and then it's a new fire, but it's not really the same fire. So the rebirth is basically based on that same concept. You're not really the same person. You just basically a stream of consciousness that carries what they would call karma, and that's that karma that goes into what they would call a different life, a different form, if I may say. That is what the samsara is all about: being reborn or rebirth into uh, a different frame, if I may say, a different frame, a different body, but not necessarily the same person. The soul, if I may say, the soul is not the thing that is passed on. The soul is the thing that it changes with, again, with karma, and karma is not necessarily punishment. Karma is not a bad thing. Uh it's not a bad thing. It is not like, you know, and most religious beliefs, you stand before God and you're judged, and then you go to heaven or you go to hell. No, that is not a Buddhist concept. Karma is basically the energy because again, energy cannot be destroyed or nor created. When you die, the energy basically is that energy is connected to consciousness, and that is transferred over into the next rebirth. So the energy that you died with automatically goes into this new formation, if I may say. But again, I'm not here to talk with samsara and all of that. I'm just trying to give you guys an idea of something that I believe. So back to what I was saying. So we all wonder why we do not know where we go after we die. We always wonder, where do we go? Where do we go when we die? Where do we go? What happens after death? What happens after death? When life after death? And I would say, again, this is my belief now. Back to my belief. I believe this because this is something I think is possibly could be true, and but I cannot prove it per se. However, I have logical reason to believe that it is possible or plausible. And like I said, the question most individuals may ask: why don't we know? So where do we go when we die? We don't know where we go, and where are we going? And I would say the answer to that question is, the answer is, you're looking at it. The life that you have today is, you have already died. From my perspective, from the Buddhist perspective, you have had many, many lives. You have had thousands, countless thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of lives. I can't even tell you how much lives you've had, because you've always been trapped into this illusion of self, and we keep coming back and keep coming back. And that is the goal of the Buddhist, the enlightenment, the awareness of this matrix, this trap, to try to escape the process of rebirth, the death and rebirth cycle, and because of being aware that this is an illusion and this is a trap. And that is what the Buddhist concept of enlightenment is all about. And again, and one of the major reasons that we do not come to this conclusion and cannot come to this conclusion, because we do not do introspection and we believe in the false self. So again, just like I was saying, uh, so back to my what I was saying is that the person that you see today is a continuation of the person that you was in the last life. Some of the things that you had carried over into this life, some of your personality traits. And if I remember clearly, there are 4 types of karma, but I'm not really necessarily here to talk about that. But the first karma, if I remember clearly, has to do with things that came over from the last life, certain habits you may have, certain personality traits you may have. Some of those traits might have been trickled down over into the life that you have today. So again, so now my logic behind this, so again, like I said, you have died many, many times, and this is you coming back again, not the old you, again, not you was not John Doe or whatever name you were, whatever. This is a new, evolved you, a different part of you, and but that energy is in you that transformed into this new person. So, like I was saying, so my logic behind this is there are 5 stages of sleep. 5 stages of sleep. We have there's actually 4 stages, but most individuals they count only 4. But I'm going to count the 5. But 4 stages of sleep is uh, falling asleep, REM, light sleep, and deep sleep, if I remember clearly. Falling asleep, REM, light sleep, deep sleep. And REM sleep is rapid eye movement. That is when we dream. That is when we sleep and we dream and we have dreams. And so we go through these cycles, and we usually go through 4 or 5 cycles of sleep throughout the night. Again, 4 stages of sleep and 4 cycles of sleep. We do this 4 to 5 times. We go from falling asleep, light sleep, sorry, falling asleep, REM, light sleep, and then deep sleep. So again, my reason to believe that it is possible that this Buddhist concept could be true is because the same way when you sleep, when you fall asleep, in most cases you might be aware when you're falling asleep and you're getting tired and you feel tired and you might feel like, oh, I'm getting tired, I feel like I'm going to fall asleep. But most of us don't know when we actually fall asleep. Most of us can't tell the exact time we fall asleep. We don't know. We could be watching the time. The last time we saw the clock and it was 10 o'clock, we could say, oh, it's 10 o'clock, but we can't tell, we can't say, oh, I fell asleep at 10:30 or whatever the case may be. We actually have no clue or recognition of the actual time when we fall asleep. And also, when we did fall asleep, we don't remember where we was. We don't remember we were in our bed or in our car or wherever it is that we may be falling asleep or we fell asleep. We don't remember any of that. We can't remember. We don't remember. We don't even remember our name. We don't remember anything. However, all we notice after a period of time, we remember waking up in some dream state in some other place, fixing a car, whatever it is that we were doing. We just realize that we're doing this thing in this dream state, but we have no idea how we got there. We don't remember anything. We don't know anything. And most of us don't even remember our dreams. Most of us can't even remember the dream we had when we woke up. So that would give you an idea of where I'm going with this is. If you did fall asleep and you did go to bed, you don't remember when you fell asleep. If you did have a dream, you don't remember. Sometimes you have what they call lucid dream, when you could kind of, some people could, realize that they are dreaming and they could wake up in a dream and do certain things. Yes, that is very uncommon. Also, it's only a select few people who actually has the ability to do that on will. Sometimes it happens without us having trying to do it. Sometimes, for a few times, seldomly, I think everybody or most people may have had that experience before, but they didn't do it voluntarily. It has happened on its own. Again, because we don't really control anything. If we could have controlled it, most of us would be having lucid dreams every night, waking up, flying, and doing whatever we want to do. But that is not the case, because it is a reason why we don't remember anything when we dream. It's because the body, when we dream and we fall asleep, it is a necessary process that the body goes through, to cleanse itself, to detoxify, to heal, to grow. There's all kind of growth hormone. There's a lot of stuff that goes on when we sleep. The body needs to sleep. The body organizes thoughts like a computer, defragmenting its drive and putting things back in place and so forth. That is the process that goes on when we sleep. That is why we can't remember anything when we sleep, because there's a natural process where the body has to do this thing, and we have to be somewhat unaware of it. And then that's why sometimes we dream, because the things that we dream in a lot of cases may have something to do with some of our thoughts and some of the things that we may have held on in our mind psychologically throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the month, and throughout the years. And sometimes we just dream the same things over and over and over. Sometimes we have the same dreams repetitively, because this is a process again of a recycling of the mind, if I may say, getting rid of garbage and collecting new data, getting rid of all unnecessary data, if I may say. So back to my point. So if you cannot remember your dream, you don't remember when you fell asleep, what makes you think you could remember your last life? Most people can't even remember what they had to eat yesterday. Most people can't even remember what they had the couple of hours ago. They don't even know nothing what went on a few hours ago. Why do you think you could remember something about your past life? And the reason is that you are not supposed to know your past life, because imagine knowing all these things happened to you in the past. Imagine if you had a tragic death, you died, it was a fire, an accident, you got burnt alive, or you was killed tragically, you starved in a room, someone left you tied up. You don't want to remember that. That would hinder your progress, that would hinder your process, that would hinder everything. And you could go and look up, I think there's a gentleman called David Hoffman. He does a good job. He's a scientist, neuroscientist, something of that sort. I can't remember who he is, but he's a smart guy. But he talks about delusion and the icons and things being illusory. So check it out, David Hoffman. He does a more, see, will give you a more scientific understanding of what I'm talking about. So again, so if you cannot remember anything that happens in a dream, how could you remember a past life? So that is something that I believe is possible, and is possibly true, and is possibly what has happened and what do happen, but we just don't remember. You have died, yes, like I said, many, many, many times, and you just don't remember. So just like sleep, when we die, we go through a transition. It's not like we go to, it's a transition. And again, just like everything else, it happens so smoothly, you just don't remember. And now you wake up in this new body as a baby, and you don't know anything, and you wonder why, and you can't remember anything. You can't remember Jack. So it's obvious, if you can't remember anything from back then, it is highly, highly possible that this is actually possible also, because you couldn't even remember your dream. So trying to remember a previous life is pretty much a waste of time. So I think that is pretty much the best explanation I could come up with as to why Jesus does not believe in God, or does not have to believe in God, because simply Jesus knows he is God. Jesus knows he and the Father is one, and you too and the Father are one. So I'm going to end this video right now. So with that being said, I would say throughout this whole video, the goal and the purpose is to know thyself. And on an astrological note, may the stars shine brightly on you always, and may the planets work in your favor always as well. Triple P, and I'm out.
Oh.